It's my first time in Finland and my first time in Turku as well. Um, Although I was in Helsinki before coming here for a reading, and I've been here in Turku now for about 4 days together with
Mhm.
and I'm enjoying it here. Unfortunately, I have little time because I also have some translation work to do, so I haven't been able to see as much as I wanted to. And also we've been doing a lot of readings here at the festival. I started writing poetry when I was about 13, and we had lessons in English literature at school, of course. But I first became really interested in poetry when I read some poems in an anthology, a book edited by Geoffrey Grigson, and this book was an anthology of modern poetry in English and translated from other languages, and included poets like Allen Ginsberg, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Gregory Corso, but also European poets like Baudelaire, Rimbaud, Vasco Popa. And so this inspired me because I saw that it was possible that poetry could be something much more direct than the traditional English poetry that we'd learnt at school. And also another factor was visits by English poets to our school, where they would come and give poetry readings. Quite well-known poets, modern, younger poets, and they would come and give poetry readings. And their style was developed from the Mersey poets, which is a movement in English poetry, British poetry in the 1960s, which tried to make poetry more immediate for people, and especially for younger people, and was influenced by the movements of the 60s as well. So this made me also very interested in what poetry could be and how it could be more relevant to my life as a teenager at that time, but also our lives in general at that point in history. So that's what influenced me, and then I started writing myself around this time to express my feelings and thoughts and wishes and ideas and fantasies, and that's how I started. I have lots of projects, of course, all the time. In fact, I have a sort of backlog of projects which I would like to finish. A lot of poems that need to be written up and worked on, and I write down a lot in notebooks, and the problem is keeping up with these notebooks. And I tend to keep on writing in the notebooks, but it's not so easy to write them up and work on them all the time continuously. So I tend to end up with a backlog of notebook work which hasn't been written up. So that's my main continuous project. I also have a lot of recordings which I need to work on, produce, put onto CDs, things like this, of my own work, and also collaborations with other groups, Group Labyrinth, which I co-founded and worked with for many years and still do, and also with Darstrugistendar, with whom I'm here now, of performances at festivals that I've done. So there's a lot of live recordings that I need to work on. But revolutionary projects, I don't know. I'm always looking for new ways to write and to perform my poetry. So I'm always on the lookout for new things. And of course, I think as a poet, you're always trying to make it new, as Ezra Pound said. So to try and reinvent your own style of poetry and writing, and so poetry itself. Explore new possibilities of poetry. So I think you're always trying to do this as a poet, trying to find new things to express and also ways to express a great poem, so to speak. It doesn't need anything else. Perhaps I will read it like that and then find, oh well, I could add an instrument to this or something, or I might immediately see, yes, I can do this in this way or that way.
I am the last to go. 5 hours of white heat is the time that it takes to blast me to cinders, to place in the urn on your mantelpiece. Boom, 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 boom. Shaman brood over me, stare for future sight. I'm your source of music, the instrument that pleases. I'm your everyday tool and your sacred weapon. Boom, boom, boom.
So I'm interested in the performance aspect, but first I'm interested in the poetry as writing, of course. I think probably the performance aspect brings poems over to people more easily, and that is perhaps when you can reach people most directly. If you have with a book of poems, it's great if people read them, if people buy them and appreciate them and understand them. But of course, when you're interacting directly with someone or reading to someone, performing for somebody, then you have perhaps more possibilities to reach them and convey your meaning. So I think being in the same room is always more powerful than reading on the page in the end. But there is something more than the words which are just on the page. When you read them, you have perhaps more possibility to interpret, to think about them yourself, and it's of course fantastic. But as the originator of the work, you have another dimension to bring it across to people if you're there in the space and you are telling them something, especially in a certain way to emphasize your message. So it gives the performance gives another dimension to the writing. London is closer to me because that's where I come from originally, where I was born, where I grew up, where I started writing poetry, for example. My first poetry, yes, where I still go back to, and where I obviously can very easily identify with the culture and the literature, and also it's the language which I mostly write in. I write in German as well sometimes, but mostly in English. So it is the language of London, England, Britain. But obviously I've been living in Vienna for a long time now, most of my life in fact, already. So Vienna has become home, really. I don't know whether I'll go back and live in London at some point, but it's possible. But at the moment my life is concentrated in Vienna, and a lot of the work that I've done as a poet in Vienna has been perhaps where I've developed most in my writing. Also because there I came into contact with so many people who came to Vienna and who influenced me, like people from the American beat movement, Allen Ginsberg, Anne Waldman, Ed Sanders, Jerome Rothenberg, so very well-known American beat and experimental poets, Jackson Maclow, for example, or the sound poet, Henri Chopin from France. So a lot of these people came to Vienna through a situation in which a school of poetry grew up in Vienna, and these poets were invited to take part in academies in Vienna. So I was able to get into contact with them. and then started a group, Labyrinth, in Vienna, with another poet, Karen Kaminka, an American poet. And that was in 1993 and has been continuing ever since then. We organise a lot of events and readings and festivals and publications, and so a lot of the work I've done in poetry has been happening in Vienna. So Vienna's been the place of my poetic work for a long time now. So I identify with both of them in different ways. But when I don't get homesick in that sense, but when I go back to London, I always think, oh, this is a nice place. It'd be nice to live here again. So I sort of get homesick when I'm in London, in a way. When I go back to Vienna, then I forget about it and get on with my life there.